Welcome to the ASMR History Channel. I'm Sophie, and today we'll be delving into the remarkable life and career of Pompey the Great. Pompey, known as Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus, was a central figure during the final years of the Roman Republic. His military exploits and political manoeuvres significantly shaped the course of Roman history. From his early conquests in Africa and the Eastern Mediterranean, to his pivotal role in the triumvirate with Julius Caesar and Crassus, Pompey's story is one of ambition, conflict, and legacy. Join me as we explore the highs and lows of his extraordinary journey. Pompey, also known as Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus, emerged as a prominent military leader and influential political figure during the twilight of the Roman Republic. His early exploits across Africa, Sicily, and the Eastern Mediterranean not only expanded Rome's dominion, but also solidified his standing as a formidable commander. Forming the inaugural triumvirate with Julius Caesar and Crassus, Pompey strategically navigated the corridors of power, though internal strains eventually fractured the once unified alliance. The subsequent clash of egos between Pompey and Julius Caesar would prove pivotal in reshaping the trajectory of Roman governance. Born on September the 29th, 106 BC, in Picenum, Pompey hailed from a lineage of regional nobility, with his father, Gnaeus Pompeius Strabo, attaining the consulship in 89 BC. Strabo's tenure was marred by a reputation for avarice, cunning manoeuvres, and a ruthless command style. Pompey's initiation into military affairs occurred during the Social War of 91, 87 BC, where he fought alongside his father until Strabo's sudden demise in 87 amid the Bellum Octavian, a period of civil strife. The circumstances surrounding Strabo's demise remain shrouded in mystery, with conflicting reports suggesting either natural causes or a mutinous act orchestrated by his troops. Allegations of financial misconduct tainted Strabo's final days, leading to legal charges against Pompey. However, through a strategic marriage to Antistia, the daughter of the presiding judge, Pompey managed to secure his acquittal and safeguard his political standing. The year 87 BC witnessed a pivotal debate regarding the appointment of Lucius Cornelius Sulla as the supreme commander in the First Mithridatic War, a decision laden with implications for Rome's military future. In the absence of Sol, his political opponents, including Lucius Cornelius Cinna and Nas Papyrus Capo, took control of the Senate with assistance from Gaius Marius, amassing considerable wealth. Sol's return in 83 sparked a new phase of civil war. In the year before his return, Pompey the Great organised a full legion from his late father's supporters and veterans. Upon landing in Brum in the spring of 83 BC, Su began marching northwest towards Campania, prompting Pompey to lead his legion south to intercept him. The Roman government sent 3 armies against them, but Pompey managed to defeat one of these forces, forcing the enemy commanders to retreat. Upon reaching Su's camp, Pompey was formally hailed as Imperator, a significant promotion for him. During 83 BC, Suet encouraged Pompey to head back to Bonum to recruit more troops for the upcoming battles. As conflicts escalated, Sulla advanced towards Rome, while Pompey, aiding Sua's lieutenant Metellus, confronted consul Gaius Papyrus Garbo in Cisalpine Gaul. Serving as the cavalry leader under Metellus, Pompey and Metellus achieved a crucial victory over Caro's lieutenant near the river Assus. The tides turned with news of Sol's triumph at the Battle of Sac Porters, causing Garbo to retreat to his stronghold in Arenum, where Pompey's cavalry continuously harassed his forces during the retreat, Metellus secured another victory against Gaius Marcius Sauros, a lieutenant of Garbo. Pompey's cavalry played a pivotal role in intercepting Suas's retreating troops near Sena Gallico, ensuring a decisive win and subsequent looting of the town. While Metellus continued his campaign in the northwest, Pompey joined forces with Sol in the south, marking a significant turning point in the civil war that would have repercussions in Rome. Pompey proceeded southwest along the Via Flaminia towards Spoletium, teaming up with Crus to defeat Carrinas once more. After besieging Carrinas in Spoletium, Pompey resumed his march as Carrinas narrowly evaded capture and fled towards Sol's command. Soon after, Pompey successfully ambushed a substantial force led by Sauros, striving to reach Presta, a town where Marius the Younger, Carbo's consular ally and symbolic opposition leader against Sulla, was blockaded. The inability of these forces to break the southern blockades in Umbria resulted in the government's resistance weakened as Etruria, combined with Melissa's success in urging the north, ended the campaigning season of 82. In a final effort to relieve Presta, the government rallied 10,000 legionaries to join forces with old adversaries from the social war, the Samnites and the Lucanians, pursued by Pompey. These combined forces initially advanced towards Pesta, but changed course towards an undefended Rome, thwarted by Sol's strong blockade. Their interception and defeat by Sulla at the Battle of the Gene Gate marked the end of the events in 82 BC, where Sulla successfully expelled his opponents from Italy and secured his dictator appointment by the Senate. Despite respect for Pompey's abilities and his growing influence, Sulla sought to strengthen their alliance by convincing Pompey to divorce his wife and marry his stepdaughter Aemilia. Unfortunately, the marriage was brief, as Aemilia, already pregnant by her previous husband, passed away in childbirth shortly after the wedding. Following the Marian faction's defeat, the remnants sought refuge in Sicily, regrouping under Marcus Pereira, aided by Aligbo's fleet. Cneus Domitius Ahenobarbus, meanwhile, held dominion over the Roman province of Africa. Upon Pompey's arrival in Sicily with a formidable force, Pereira fled the island, and Gubbo was captured and executed, a decision deemed necessary by Pompey due to Carbo's alleged crimes against Roman citizens. This action, coupled with the general sentiment towards him, led to Pompey earning the disparaging moniker Adolcentus Carnifex, or the Young Butcher. Leaving Sicily under Gaius Mulci's governance, his brother-in-law, Pompey, turned his attention to Africa, where he faced and defeated Ahenobarbus at the Battle of Uae, swiftly subjugating Numidia and executing its king, Hippal, another Marian faction ally. During this military campaign, Pompey's troops began to hail him as Magnus, or the Great, drawing comparisons to the revered figure of Alexander the Great. Pompey eventually adopted this title into his name, becoming known as Pompey the Great. Upon his triumphant return to Rome, Pompey sought a triumph to commemorate his conquests, a bold move considering his escalating power. While complying with the request, Youth Sulla aimed to lessen Pompey's prominence by simultaneously bestowing victories upon Lucius Linius Murena and Gaius Valerius Flus. It was a 3-for-1 deal, making the most of the situation. Concurrently, Pompey tied the knot with Mucia Tertia from the esteemed Meta family, and together they had 3 offspring. Pompey the Younger, also known as Naos, a daughter named Pompeia Magna, and a younger son, Zeus. The marriage endured until their separation in 61 BC. Initially endorsing Marcus Aemilius Lepidus for the consulship in 78 BC, a decision made against Sol's counsel, according to Plutarch, although some contemporary historians doubt this claim. Following Sue's demise that same year, Lepidus opposed the late dictator's state funeral and moved swiftly to repeal certain of Sol's reforms. In January 77 BC, Lepidus assumed the proconsulship of Cisalpine and Transalpine Gaul, disregarding a Senate directive to return to Rome, requesting an additional consul term, which the Senate promptly denied. Lepidus gathered his forces and marched towards Rome. In response, the Senate took measures and selected Pompey the Great to counter him. As Lepidus approached the south, Pompey rallied veteran troops from Rome and advanced north to besiege Mutina, the capital city of Colline Gaul, controlled by Lepidus's ally Marcus Junius Brutus. After enduring a prolonged siege, Brutus surrendered the town, only to be assassinated the next day, allegedly on Pompey's orders. Simultaneously, outside Rome, Catulus defeated Lepidus, while Pompey launched an attack from the rear, trapping him near Cosa. With his forces depleted, Lepidus retreated to Sardinia, where he met his end. These events not only crushed Lepidus' rebellion, but also bolstered Pompey's image as a resolute and efficient military commander. When trouble brewed in Rome, Pompey was the man to call upon. The Sertorian War erupted swiftly in 80 BC, when Quintus Sertorius, a formidable leader with ties to the Marian faction, sparked a rebellion in Hispania. Joined by other Marian survivors, including Perenna, and supported by local tribes, Sertorius swiftly seized control of Hispania Citerior, ousting Quintus Caecilius Metellus Pius from neighbouring Hispania Ulterior and consolidating his dominance over significant territories. Recognising the escalating threat, the Senate turned to their go-to guy, the man of the moment. Despite the dubious legality of his appointment, Pompey was given full military command in Spain. Urgent circumstances led him to gather a substantial force comprising 30,000 foot soldiers and 1,000 horsemen to face the formidable Sertorius. Prior to his arrival in Hispania, Pompey suppressed a rebellion in Gallia Narbonensis and established winter quarters near Narba Martius. In early 76 BC, Pompey crossed the sea port into the Iberian Peninsula, where he would conduct campaigns for the ensuing 5 years. Upon reaching Hispania, Pompey's presence uplifted the morale of Metellus' troops and even convinced some local rebels to switch sides. Despite facing setbacks, notably during the Battle of Laron, where Sertorius dealt Pompey a significant blow, he spent the rest of the year regrouping his forces and pondering strategic errors in anticipation of a prolonged conflict in the challenging terrain of Hispania. By 75 BC, the Sertorian War escalated, with Sertorius intensifying his attacks against Quintus Metellus Pius. Pompey clashed with and defeated Sertorius' lieutenants, Perenna and Cassius, near present-day Valencia. Metellus took advantage of this shift to vanquish Sertorius alongside deputy Lucius Hirtius at the Battle of Italica. The tide of the war ebbed and flowed frequently, culminating in a costly clash at Saguntum that exacted a toll on both sides. Adroitly, Sertorius retreated to Clunia, fortifying the town's defences to lure the Roman commanders into a prolonged siege. Simultaneously, he organised garrisons from other towns into a fresh field army. Sertorius broke the siege at Clunia, disrupting Roman supply routes both on land and sea. The logistical strain compelled Metellus to station his troops in Gaul for the winter, while Pompey settled among the Vaci in 73 BC. Reinforced by 2 additional legions, Metellus regrouped with Pompey, and together they they advanced towards the Ebro River. Concurrently, Sidorus and Peraina made strides from Lusitania. Yet, internal rifts began to erode Soros's authority, leading to a standstill in the conflict for the ensuing 2 years. By 71, the discord within his faction peaked with Pina's assassination of Soros. Pino's subsequent downfall and execution by Pompey signalled the waning of major hostilities. Following his triumph, PMPI dedicated time to restructuring the local Roman administration in Hispania. His conciliatory stance towards former adversaries pacified remaining opposition and expanded his influence and patronage throughout Hispania and into southern Gaul, laying the groundwork for future political and military dominance in the region. As Pompey wrapped up his military endeavours in Hispania, Cruz undertook the task of suppressing the Third Servile War. Pompey's arrival enabled him to confront and decimate 6,000 escapees from the battle, deeming it as the effective conclusion of the conflict. Upon his return, Pompey was granted a second triumph for his successes in Hispania and nominated for the consulship. His candidacy necessitated a special decree from the Senate due to his youth and technical breach of eligibility criteria. Pompey threw his weight behind Crassus as his co-consul, strategically placing Crassus in his debt. They were eventually elected as consuls for the year 70 BC, but their tenure was characterized by constant discord, deemed politically unproductive and devoid of accomplishments. Despite their clashes, the consulship oversaw significant political transformations, notably the reinstatement of powers to the plebeian tribune that had been stripped by Saul. Among these powers was the vital authority to veto senatorial legislation. The late Roman Republic witnessed a crucial turning point in politics when Pompey's authority was reinstated. While this move garnered widespread support from the public, it encountered strong opposition from the senatorial class, particularly the Optimates. The successful restoration of Pompey's powers depended on the collaboration of the consuls, a remarkable accomplishment considering the typically contentious nature of their partnership. Despite historical narratives often overlooking Crassus's contributions to these reforms, his backing alongside Pompey's proved vital for their implementation. Pirates posed a significant menace during Roman times, proliferating in the Mediterranean region. Over the past 5 decades, their influence had surged due to the waning power of traditional naval forces like Rhodes. Despite previous endeavours, Rome had struggled to quell their activities due to their vast numbers and widespread operations. Romans frequently categorized their adversaries as pirates or bandits, prompting some historians to argue that they were conventional foes rather than mere disorganized criminals. Primarily situated in Cilicia, the pirates escalated their raids to the extent of attacking Osta, a Roman harbour, in 68 BC, even seizing 2 senators. This event triggered widespread fear and indignation. In response, Aulus Gabinius, a tribune of the plebs in 67 BC, introduced the Lex Gabini, conferring Pompey with proconsular authority for 3 years over any province within 50 miles of the Mediterranean. Despite opposition from the Senate, the legislation was eventually enacted, empowering Pompey to appoint legates and allocate substantial financial resources for a decisive campaign against the pirates. During Pompey's offensive against the pirates, he encountered internal hurdles primarily from Roman officials who resented his extensive powers, either due to envy or pragmatic concerns. For example, Gaius Piso impeded his recruitment endeavours, while Quintus Metellus disregarded his directives. To effectively counter the pirate threat, Pompey dispersed his troops across the Mediterranean to prevent the pirates from escaping the Roman fleet through relocation. He deployed 15 legions to monitor specific regions and safeguard crucial grain routes leading to Rome. This strategic move swiftly brought the Western Mediterranean under his command. In a span of only 40 days, his naval forces pushed eastward, forcing the pirates to retreat to their strongholds in Calliso. Leading the crucial attack on their main stronghold at Corium, he achieved a decisive victory in the Battle of Corium, effectively ending the conflict in just 3 months. Known for his leniency, most of the pirates surrendered without resistance. After their capitulation, Pompey resettled them in cities ravaged during the Mithridatic War, such as Solili, which he renamed Pompeiopolis in Greece, and other towns in Libya and Calabria. These communities developed a lasting bond with Rome and Pompey, integrating into the Roman state while maintaining ties to their benefactor. It was a mutually beneficial outcome. In 73 BC, Lucius Linus Lucullus, a seasoned lieutenant of Sulla, was appointed proconsul of Cilicia and entrusted with leading the campaign in the Third Mithridatic War. The conflict reignited in 74 BC after the demise of the last ruler of Bithynia, who left his kingdom to Rome, prompting invasions by Mithridates, the Sick of Pontus, and Tigranes, the Great of Armenia. Lucullus showcased his military prowess by securing multiple triumphs. However, accusations surfaced that he was intentionally prolonging the war for personal gain, prompting a Senate inquiry. By 69 BC, discontent and mutiny festered among his troops. In 68 BC, Quintus Marcius Rex assumed command in Cilicia, while Manius, Achilles, Gabrio took charge in Bithynia. Regrettably, Gabrio's indecisiveness allowed Mithridates to reclaim much of Pontus in 67 BC and invade Cappadocia, a Roman ally, in 66 BC. Capitalizing on the situation, Pompey used his political clout to pass the Lex Manilia through the tribunate, granting him extensive authority in Asia Minor to decisively defeat Mithridates, complementing the powers bestowed upon him by the Lex Gabinia. Although the Optimates, the conservative faction, privately expressed concerns about one individual amassing such power, they acquiesced, mindful of Pompey's substantial popular backing. Lucullus, embittered by his replacement, derisively dubbed Pompey a scavenger who exploited the achievements of others, a thinly veiled reference to Pompey's new command and his alleged role in concluding the campaign against Spartacus. Concurrently, Pompey forged an alliance with Phraates II, the Parthian king, persuading him to launch an incursion into Armenia. Phraates, as a figure of legend, put forth a proposal for a ceasefire, while Lucilius argued that the war was on the brink of conclusion. Nonetheless, Pompey, in pursuit of more significant concessions, dismissed the offer. As a result, Mithras retreated into Armenia, closely followed by Pompey. By the close of 66 BC, Pompey had located and defeated him at Luz, decisively altering the course of the conflict. Following the battle, Mithridates, accompanied by a small group of loyal soldiers, managed to elude capture and escape to Coltis on the Black Sea. There, he successfully overthrew the Roman-backed ruler of the Champosporus, his own son Maris, who subsequently took his own life. Amidst the turmoil, Pompey pressed forward with his military campaign, entering Armenia with the assistance of Tigranes the Younger. In an effort to prevent further hostilities, Tigranes the Elder swiftly engaged in negotiations with Pompey, agreeing to a substantial monetary payment and the relinquishment of the territory seized by Lucilius. Furthermore, Roman forces were granted permission to be stationed within his jurisdiction. In 65 BC, Pompey advanced towards Cortes with the objective of capturing Mithridates. This endeavour required him to first subdue various local tribes aligned with Mithridates. Following a series of triumphs, he united with Xilius, the commander of his Pontine fleet at Phases. However, a renewed uprising in Caucasian Albania diverted Pompey's focus, prompting a strategic retreat to address these additional disturbances. After his triumph at the river Abbas, Pompey successfully negotiated with the Albanians and secured truces with the other tribes in the northern Caucasus region. Subsequently, Pompey spent the winter in Armenia settling minor territorial disputes between his allies, Phraates of Parthia and Tigrins. In 64 BC, while upholding a naval blockade to weaken Mithridates, Pompey shifted his attention to Syria. He annexed several affluent independent cities, integrating them into the newly formed Roman province of Syria. This expansion not only augmented his wealth and reputation, but also drew criticism from his political adversaries in Rome, who argued that his actions exceeded the authority bestowed upon him. Meanwhile, Mithridates, now aged and increasingly isolated, found himself besieged in Pantium by another one of his sons, Pharnaces II. An attempt on his life through poison failed, purportedly due to his consistent consumption of antidotes as a precaution against such eventualities, a measure that appeared to have been effective. Ultimately, he was slain by his own rebels in an attempt to curry favour with Rome. Pharnaces, Mithridates' son, dispatched Mithridates' body to Pompey. In response, Pompey recognised Pharnaces as the ruler of the Bosporan kingdom and formally aligned him as a Roman ally, thereby signifying the end of Mithridates' rule. Challenging the authority of Rome for a considerable period, we now delve into the downfall of the Seleucid Empire. After this incident, in 64 BC, Pompey incorporated Syria into Roman territory, which not only expanded Roman influence, but also brought about instability in the entire area. The power vacuum that ensued allowed numerous cities to proclaim their independence. In the early months of 63 BC, Pompey left Antioch, progressing southwards and capturing coastal towns like Apamea. Progressing through the anti-Lebanon mountains, he took control of Pella, Jordan, and Damascus. His entrance into Judea was prompted by local disputes that endangered regional peace. The situation in Judea, worsened by the ongoing Hasmonean conflict between Hyrcanus II and Aristobulus II, compelled Pompey to intervene. The military operation reached its peak with the siege of Jerusalem, during which the defenders of Aristobulus retreated to the temple, which was subsequently ransacked by the Romans. Judea was established as a vassal kingdom under Hyrcanus, integrated into the Decapolis, and placed under the authority of the newly established province of Syria. Pompey's reorganization of the eastern territories involved the establishment of the province of Bithynia and Pontus, with the remaining lands of Mithridates being distributed among Roman allies. Ariobarzanes was reinstated to his throne in Lesser Armenia, which was previously under Tigranes and annexed into Galatia, where Pompey's ally Deiotarus was appointed as ruler. Moreover, the coastal area of Pamphylia, notorious for piracy, was amalgamated with other inland regions into Cilicia, divided into 6 administrative units. These territorial and administrative adjustments proved advantageous for the Roman state, resulting in increased revenue and successful missions. Nevertheless, they also contributed to the augmentation of Pompey's personal wealth and network of supporters, cementing his influence over the newly restructured region. In 62 BC, Pompey returned to Italy, dispersing significant rewards to his soldiers, totaling approximately loyalty. This act of generosity not only aimed to ensure the allegiance of his troops, but also served as a strategy to maintain their loyalty, despite concerns that he might follow in Sulla's footsteps by leveraging his newfound authority for personal gain. Pompey's actions illustrated a delicate balance between advancing the interests of the Roman state and enhancing his personal wealth and influence. Upon reaching Brundisium, Pompey discharged his troops as he proceeded towards Rome. A significant number of people gathered to catch a glimpse of him, demonstrating his enduring popularity among the common folk. In the year 61 BC, Pompey marked his 45th birthday with a grand triumph to commemorate his triumphs in Asia Minor and the Near East. He proudly proclaimed that the newly established eastern provinces had notably increased the annual state revenue. Although Pompey kept his personal wealth details private, it was evident that he possessed considerable riches. Part of his wealth was utilised to fund the renowned theatre of Pompey in ancient Rome. Despite his achievements, Pompey encountered obstacles with the Senate. They rejected the treaties he had brokered in the East, with opposition spearheaded by the Optimates like Gaius Marcius Censorinus and Metellus Scipio. Additionally, the Senate thwarted a proposal to allocate land to Pompey's veterans and the landless urban populace. This act displayed the Senate's belief in their ability to handle and quell public discontent, despite the widespread support for Pompey's endeavours. Pompey found it challenging to combat the Optimate faction single-handedly. His political landscape underwent a transformation when Julius Caesar sought his backing for the consulship in 59 BC. Caesar realised the advantage of forming an alliance with Pompey, whose sway over the urban voters could enhance his own political ambitions. This alliance was further solidified with the support of Crassus. With the endorsement of Pompey and Crassus, Caesar secured one of the two consulships for 59 BC. Caesar's position of influence enabled him to push through legislation that not only served his own interests, but also those of his associates, Pompey and Crassus. The time had come to call in the favours owed to him. Despite his status as the least experienced member of the future triumvirate, Caesar swiftly established himself as a central figure in this informal union, aimed primarily at circumventing the authority of the conservative Optimates. Pompey brought his unmatched military reputation and widespread popularity among the Roman populace to the alliance, valuable assets in the Republic's power structure. In contrast, Crassus contributed substantial financial resources, being exceedingly wealthy and capable of creating extensive networks of influence, even though he lacked the military accomplishments often deemed essential for political success in Rome at that time. This strategic partnership among the trio represented a significant shift in the distribution of power within the late Roman Republic, triggering numerous major political transformations. Upon his election, Caesar promptly pushed through a new agrarian law, leveraging the backing of Pompey's veteran supporters, who allegedly pressured the Senate into compliance. This show of strength effectively marginalised Bibulus, Caesar's fellow consul, who opposed the legislation and was reportedly attacked in the Forum, leading to his retreat into what amounted to house detention for the remainder of his term. Furthermore, Caesar successfully secured the endorsement of Pompey's reforms in the eastern territories and assumed the governorship of Gallia Cisalpina and later Gallia Transalpina following the demise of the previous governor. Nevertheless, the triumvirate encountered significant resistance from prominent senators such as Cicero, a long-standing ally of Pompey who diverged regarding Publius Clodius Pulcher. Clodius, backed by Caesar and Pompey, targeted Cicero due to his involvement in extrajudicial executions during the Catilinarian conspiracy, resulting in Cicero's temporary exile. Despite this, Cicero returned to Rome 18 months later, largely due to Pompey's influence, and supported Pompey's appointment as Praefectus Annonae during a grain shortage crisis, displaying both gratitude and pragmatism. By 56 BC, Pompey and Crassus, despite their historical rivalry and Pompey's concerns regarding Caesar's increasing military renown, joined forces to secure their joint election as consuls for 55 BC. The campaign was marked by the customary Roman political machinations, betrayals, and violence. Yet, with Caesar's support, they emerged victorious. Upon assuming their positions, they coordinated the passing of legislation that designated Crassus to lead a military campaign in Syria against the Parthians, Pompey to govern the provinces of Hispania and Africa, and extended Caesar's authority in Gaul. These decrees bestowed upon all three individuals expansive military and diplomatic powers for a span of 5 years, granting them the authority to recruit soldiers and participate in warfare or diplomacy as they saw fit. Fast forward to 54 BC. Amidst the tumultuous activities in Gaul, Caesar found himself confronted with a swiftly changing political environment in Rome. Meanwhile, Crassus embarked on an ill-fated expedition against the Parthians. During this time, Caesar suffered a personal tragedy with the passing of his wife Julia during childbirth in September. The subsequent deaths of Crassus and his son at the Battle of Carrhae in May of 53 BC significantly shifted the delicate power dynamics, eliminating a crucial buffer between Caesar and Pompey and laying the groundwork for a direct confrontation. The situation escalated further in 52 BC when violence disrupted the consular elections, leading to their suspension. Amidst this chaos, the Optimate faction, spearheaded by figures like Bibulus and backed by Cato, advocated for radical measures. Their proposal for Pompey to be appointed as the sole consul, deviating from traditional Roman practices, was eventually approved. Following his appointment, Pompey solidified his political alliances by marrying Cornelia, the widow of Crassus, and appointing her father, Mettus Scipio Nasica, as his consular partner for the latter part of the year. During his consulship, Pompey promoted legislation that could have significant repercussions for the Republic's stability, aiming to retroactively prosecute political violence, potentially exposing Caesar to legal repercussions for alleged misconduct during his consulship in 59 BC, once his proconsular immunity expired. In anticipation of potential legal challenges upon his departure from Gaul, Caesar took preemptive actions by planning to run for the consulship in absentia in 48 BC. However, a legislation supported by Pompey mandated candidates to be physically present in Rome to run for office, complicating Caesar's strategies and contributing to the inevitable slide towards civil war in 49 BC. Despite outward appearances of cooperation, Pompey viewed Caesar as a substantial threat, leading to former allies becoming adversaries. This sentiment was echoed by many members of the Senate, including Gilles and Gas Glorius Martellus in 50 BC, who were known opponents of Caesar. Alongside them, Cio, a plebeian tribune, also opposed Caesar and advocated for measures aimed at stripping him of his command in Gaul. By resorting to bribery of both Pinus and Curio to bypass these measures, Curio proposed a resolution in a strategic manoeuvre. He recommended that both Caesar and Pompey should either simultaneously disarm or risk being branded as enemies of the state. This ultimatum appealed to those seeking to avoid conflict, but was deemed unfeasible by the Optimates, who perceived Caesar as a menace requiring elimination. The refusal of this proposal pushed the Republic closer to open conflict, gradually descending into disorder. The Senate's stance towards Caesar remained inflexible, influenced by a strong faction reluctant to make concessions. In December, Caesar strategically positioned himself in Ravenna, located just beyond the borders of the Roman Republic, with a seasoned legion. The Senate, deeply suspicious of Pompey's leadership, labelled Caesar a public enemy on January 7th. Defying this, Caesar famously crossed the Rubicon River into Italy on January 11th, commencing the Roman Civil War. Despite being significantly outnumbered in resources, Caesar lacked a naval fleet and only had 3 weakened legions at his disposal. Conversely, Pompey enjoyed the substantial backing of the Roman Senate and the state's formidable resources, along with the loyalty of his supporters in the east. Despite Pompey seeming to hold the upper hand, his position was more precarious than it appeared. Acting merely as a counsellor to a divided Senate, with some advocating for peace and others wary of Pompey's motives, he faced as much suspicion from the Senate as Caesar did, influencing Pompey's military strategies. Necessary approval from the consuls was required, thereby limiting his independence. Despite his recommendations, not all were followed. An instance being Cicero's refusal to provide recruitment aid, and Cato's rejection of command over Sicily, a crucial location for overseeing Rome's grain provision. This lack of support from coordinators certainly did not aid Pompey, especially with Caesar swiftly approaching Rome, catching Pompey's defences off guard despite being outnumbered. Caesar's army was composed of battle-hardened soldiers who were deeply devoted, in contrast to many of Pompey's troops who were either mercenaries or inexperienced. This contrast became apparent during the siege of Corinium, where Pompey's ally, Lucius Domitius, surrendered his 13,000 soldiers to Caesar. These forces under Ospolio were then dispatched to capture Sicily. In response, Pompey withdrew from Rome, urging senators and officials to accompany him to Brundisium. From there, he successfully transported his troops across the Adriatic to Dyrrhachium and Thessaly. Meanwhile, Caesar, unable to immediately pursue due to a lack of ships, focused on securing his rear by defeating Pompey's forces in Hispania before returning to Rome in December of 49 BC. This delay allowed Pompey to gather an army nearly double the size of Caesar's and maintain control of the sea routes through his naval dominance. By January 48 BC, however, Caesar managed to cross the Adriatic Sea with 7 legions, landing in southern Albania. After capturing Oricum and Apollonia, he advanced towards Dyrrhachium, Pompey's main supply stronghold. Pompey arrived in time to thwart Caesar's advancements and established a fortified camp across the river Apsus. The two armies found themselves in a stalemate, neither side willing to initiate hostilities. Caesar due to his military disadvantage, and Pompey preparing to weaken Caesar through attrition. Similar to his earlier tactics against Myodes, the deadlock was broken when Mark Antony successfully crossed the Adriatic with 4 legions, landing at Nymphium, approximately 57 kilometres north of Dyrrhachium. In an attempt to prevent Antony's forces from joining Caesar, Pompey moved northeast to set up an ambush. However, sympathisers loyal to Caesar in the area informed Antony of the trap, enabling him to hold his position until Caesar drew near. Faced with the threat of being caught between 2 Caesarian forces, Pompey strategically retreated. With their forces combined, Caesar redistributed his troops. he dispatched 1.5 legions to Aetolia and Thessaly to secure provisions and support, and sent 2 more legions under Demus Calvinus to block Metellus Scipio in Macedonia. Simultaneously, Pompey's eldest son, Cneius, dealt a significant blow to Caesar by destroying his fleet at Oricum and Lecce, effectively cutting off Caesar's supply lines from Italy. Caesar attempted to lure Pompey into battle. In the confrontation at the Sarum, Pompey opted to avoid direct combat, skillfully manoeuvring himself the next day. Caesar subsequently led his forces back towards Ducum, establishing a camp before Pompey's arrival. With insufficient siege equipment to capture Durham, and unwilling to leave his rear vulnerable to Pompey's attacks, Caesar made the strategic decision to besiege Pompey instead. Despite Pompey having ample food supplies, Caesar tactically blocked local rivers to induce a water scarcity and limit foraging opportunities for Pompey's cavalry. The worsening conditions compelled Pompey to take a decisive action in late July, breaking through a section of Caesar's defences and nullifying the siege, prompting Caesar to retreat to Apollonia. Upon Metellus Scipio's reinforcement of Pompey in Thessaly, Caesar advanced south to confront them, joining forces with Demus Calvinus en route. Caesar's troops looted the city of Cumae, while Pompey hesitated to engage in battle near Phalus, possibly due to his caution. Despite being outnumbered, Pompey, commanding approximately 38,000 soldiers to Caesar's 22,000, held a notable cavalry advantage. Pompey organised his forces for battle on August 9th, aiming to flank Caesar from the left. However, Caesar foresaw Pompey's tactic and effectively countered the cavalry assault, leading to a decisive victory over Pompey's army. Following the defeat at Phalus, Pompey fled the battlefield and sought sanctuary in Medan, where he reunited with his wife Cornelia. Most of his allies from the east were either killed or captured, with the exception of the young Ptolemy XIII of Egypt. Recognising Egypt's riches and strategic significance, Pompey considered it a viable place of refuge. Meanwhile, Cato announced his determination to continue the resistance against Caesar from Africa, while many of Pompey's senatorial backers opted for reconciliation with Caesar and a return to Rome. Pompey set sail with a modest fleet towards Egypt and arrived at Pelium on September the 28th, 48 BC. However, Egypt was engulfed in internal strife, a civil conflict between Ptolemy III and his sister Cleopatra VII. Pompey met a tragic fate as he was betrayed and assassinated by Lucius Septimus, a Roman officer who had once served under him but now sided with the Egyptian army. In the grim aftermath, Pompey's body was hastily disposed of. Pompey's servants conducted his cremation on the shore, preserving his head as a macabre offering meant for Julius Caesar. This act of assassination stemmed from concerns within Ptolemy's court about Pompey's potential bid for control over Egypt, exploiting the allegiance of Roman mercenaries like Septimus in the Egyptian army. Furthermore, Ptolemy's counsellors likely viewed the murder as an opportunity to curry favour with Caesar amid his ongoing rivalry with Cleopatra. Nevertheless, this scheme ultimately proved to be counterproductive, as history reveals. The poignant destiny of Pompey's final remains is a tale unto itself. Eventually, his widow Cornelia received his preserved head, interring it at the family estate in the Alban Hills. Cicero, moved by the circumstances of Pompey's demise, mournfully remarked that Pompey's influence outlasted his actual authority, marking a tragic conclusion to the illustrious career of the once mighty Roman general. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of Pompey the Great's life here on the ASMR History Channel. Pompey's impact on the Roman Republic was profound. marked by his military genius and complex political strategies. Despite the turbulent end to his career, his legacy endures in the annals of history as one of Rome's greatest commanders. If you enjoyed this deep dive into ancient history, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, this is Sophie, wishing you peaceful and enlightening historical journeys.